senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale. Non è un'idea. Innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli. Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale. Non è un'idea. Innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli.
La civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buon pomeriggio e benvenuti tutte le persone che sono qua in sala e tutti coloro che ci seguono da lontano. Sono veramente felice e onorato di moderare questo incontro, come si dice, che ospita due personalità eccezionali. Il Cardinal José Tolentino de Mendonça, Prefetto del Dicastery Vaticano per la cultura e l'educazione. E lo scrittore Daniele Mencarelli, che è anche un grande amico.
Grazie.
My name's Alessandro Banfi. I'm a journalist and TV author. And I will be the facilitator of this dialogue on friendship. I must confess that within the framework of the Rimini meeting, we have this encounter between two great personalities. And specifically, this edition is very much focused on friendship and literature. And I must confess that we chose this title, the title of this meeting. And the title is, What Are You Doing, Moon in the Sky? The Unfinished Mystery of Friendship. So this title comes from an insight, from an idea that came to my mind reading the book written by Cardinal Tolentino. He wrote this book with this title, Friendship. The book was published right before this edition of the Rimini meeting in a very timely manner. And so this is one of the verses by Leopardi, who are at the very heart, in the very heart of each and any one of us. Because they remind us of this request for truth, for the infinite, for the absolute that is in the very heart of each and any one of us. All of us come from a great master, and this master, this teacher we had at school, taught us read the poem by Giacomo Leopardi and the question it contains. So this verse is one of the chapters of the book written by our Cardinal. However, this chapter soon made me remind me of an underlying topic. And this is something that I also found in the work by Daniele Mencarelli, Everything needs salvation. Everything calls for salvation, which was a fantastic event in the world of communication and also in the world of TV shows, because this was then turned into a very famous Netflix series. This chapter, citing Giacomo Leopardi, I considered something that was a fantastic passage for this session. So we asked two authors to play it, because actually it is appropriate to always start from a text. So we will start from reading out these verses, and then we will ask questions to our guests. So from Friendship of José Tolentino de Mendonça. The verses from Giacomo Leopardi's Wandering Shepherd of Asia of Giacomo Leopardi. What do you do, moon, in the sky? What do you do? Tell me, what do you do, silent moon? Tell me, O moon, what good is his life to the shepherd, your life to you? Where does this short wandering of mine go, your immortal course? In the poem, the wandering shepherd contemplates the moon. And what need does he have? What is he searching for? In search of a depth that we may never fully reach, but in which we need to feel immersed. There is a wider horizon beyond the individual solution to my existence. I will remain incomplete. Some essential part of me will remain undeveloped if I never come to seriously compare the wandering of my brief wandering with the immortal course. In Latin, the word contemplation comes from the combination of two terms, cum and templum, which were used in ancient times to indicate the open space in domes to interpret the signs of the future. So to contemplate does not only mean to introduce a beneficial slowness into our gaze. It also means to perceive the time of our life as a relational fabric. It is a dialogical intersection that infinitely expands the meaning that the word friendship can contain. Thank you very much. So, Your Eminence, I have a first question to you. What is the relationship between friendship and this sense of the infinite, of this radical questioning? Maybe we are not alone in asking, and you, moon, what do you do, moon, in the sky? Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to greet Daniele Mencarelli and Alessandro, and I would like to share with you the fact that I am particularly happy to be with you today. When I arrived, Matteo welcomed me at the station, and I asked how many people do participate in the meeting. And Matteo was very tired, and actually he answered, well, many people, there's many people. And so I asked the same question to Alessandro, and Alessandro answered, really many people. And now, I mean, looking at you, looking at the audience, I am certain that I got the right information, right piece of information from them. There's really many of you, and this is fantastic. So to answer your question, I would say that we should not be afraid of being lonely. A friend is not the solution. He or she is not the drug that can heal us of the fundamental loneliness of that space, of that question that all human beings necessarily inhabit. So friendship is not there to ease life. It's quite the opposite. Friendship is there to make life more authentic. I remember of a quote by Simone Weil, who used to say, and I quote, "Friends are two parallel, straight ways that are in the infinite space." So the secret, the strength, the engine of friendship does not exist in friends. It is God who is at the very heart of friendship. In other words, a reality that transcends us all. So faced with the question of the infinite, we are faced with the responsibility of providing a very personal answer. What do friends do in our lives? Well, they help us give answers. They help us formulate an answer that comes from an experience of truth. Friendship stimulates us to give such an answer. So, looking at this wonderful moon, who is the icon of the infinite in Leopardi's poem, so looking at this moon, I think that each and any one of us is amazed, and this amazement is his or her own only. But in this, friendship can be shared. So we can share friendship with those who walk beside us, together with us, and who eventually are our friends. Thinking of Leopardi's poem, so what do you do, moon in the sky? Well, I think that in order to write down these verses, well, you must have certainly felt what friendship is. This ability that major poems have, like Leopardi or Daniele Mencarelli, consists in facing reality by assuming that there's a relationship with reality, that there's the possibility of a relationship, and that there is the otherness. So I think that in school, for example, so that the school that is represented by friendship helps us understand reality in a different way. Reality is not mute. It is within a dialogue, so we can establish a rapport, and this in a very deep way, as with the same depth that we find in Leopardi's verses, as happens in our contemporary life. I think that Leopardi managed to write this poem because he knew what kind of light the you brings to your individual experience. And actually, he knew that friends can be your masters when you're confronted with the greatest questions. This is something that we experience each and every day. So again, to answer your question, I think that within ourselves being lonely, we look at this horizon, and we need to always address this loneliness in a personal way. However, always being supported, inspired, and stimulated by the knowledge, by the human wisdom that are offered to us by friendship. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you talked about the you used to address the moon. That's the major metaphor. Thank you for this wonderful passage. Well, this is what we see in literature. So it's also important to highlight the strength of words. I think that many of you have come probably to see Daniele Mencarelli, and that's actually wonderful. Literature teaches us the sense of transcendence. There is always a hidden you, and the possibility to establish an increasingly deep, probably more silent relationship. However, without the horizon represented by the other, by the otherness that is represented, ultimately represented by God, I think that it would be impossible to produce literature. And this applies to writers, to those who believe and those who do not believe, so believers and not believers. We always have to look at the other, and always in this rapport with the other are words created. And now I would like to invite our actress to write yet another passage by Daniele Mencarelli to introduce the next question. From Everything Calls for Salvation by Daniele Mencarelli. Those 5 fools are the closest thing to friendship I have ever encountered. More, they're brothers offered by life, found in the same boat, in the middle of the same storm, amidst madness and some other thing I will know how to name one day. From the corridor, I stop and watch them. Here they are, each in their own corner of the room, defenseless against their condition, exposed to the elements, naked men embracing life, crushed by an evil received as a gift. My brothers. So, Mencarelli, in your autobiographical story, in the ward where patients were subject to compulsory enforced treatment, in Everything Calls for Salvation, you go so far as to say the following: those guys that you didn't know, but in the end, they are your friends. And so, in that word, and this is something that you write, I mean, in that word, there's something else that I still cannot define, something that unites us, that makes us brothers. Well, first of all, like His Eminence, I would like to thank you all very much for the time, for this time that we can spend together. So friendship, I'd like to draw back on what His Eminence said. Literature is the language that is generated in order to be concluded by someone else. I mean, it wouldn't exist by itself. And the same can be said for everything else. I mean, in my life, I have always tried this you through the others. This you could help me be in a situation in which I could better know myself. Sometimes when I meet young people, I make very simple examples, and I tell them that human beings are not made to look at themselves. I mean, I look at you, you look at me, but I do not look at me. And this gives you the idea of the natural relationship that should link, that should bind human beings, one with the other. While I was listening to His Eminence, I continue actually kind of having these visions, and I would like to share with you an anecdote. I come from the province of Rome, and my dialect actually discloses this very clearly. In 1985, I was 11, and in Rome there was a snowfall, a huge snowfall. The same was in Milan. Some days before, yes, I know. So I went out of my home because that was completely new to me. You had this wonderful white cover, and I found it immediately beautiful. There was a house close to mine, and Massimiliano, he was the only friend I had, and he also came out of his house. And actually I looked at him, Massimiliano, look at the snow, look at how white it is. And I can tell you that the white and the snow in that precise moment became whiter to me. So this externalization, this possibility of being amazed to a greater extent because we were sharing that experience, made the amazement even bigger. But I would like to go back to the friendship, to that the friendship that you were mentioning, Alessandro, with reference to the hospital. I do not belong to Communion and Liberation, but I know Davide Rondoni, and when I was a young adolescent, Davide Rondoni suggested that I read interesting books, and at a given point he told me, have you ever read anything from Father Giussani? I didn't know him. So he suggested that I read his books, and so thanks to Davide Rondoni, I got to know Father Giussani, and actually I got to know Per Lagerkvist, one of the poets who's to me one of the greatest poets in my life. And actually at the given point, he basically said the following: my friend is a stranger, someone I do not know, a stranger far, far away. I think that this is the evidence and also the emergency of the Spirit. I mean, we should go back to conceive the human being who is a stranger and who's far away, and he or she should be the great form of friendship that we should look for and encounter. In my life, in my novels, I tell about moments of absolute friendship, moments in which there is not even need of words, moments in which the other person, the stranger, even risked their lives for me, and actually I was a stranger for him as he was a stranger for me. So I think that today the greatest challenge lies in the fact that we should consider this unknown humanity as something that has to be known. So the friend is not someone who's within our own perimeter, but the challenge lies in getting to know the friend that we still do not know. Thank you, Daniele. So the unknown friend. I'd like now to read yet another excerpt from the book of His Eminence, from Friendship of José Tolentino de Mendonça. Friendship is a miracle that serenely preserves the appearance that there is no miracle at all. It is just the naturalness of life going on. Friendship is a way of exposing ourselves to the other, and an exposure that, however, does not break reserve, does not invade solitude. Friendship not only guards silence, but it is guarded by silence. The absence of friends makes us sick. We need mutual, person-to-person recognition. Recognition not based on a confrontation or competition, but rather on affection. Not determined by the mere laws of justice or the bonds of blood, but based on gratuitousness. It is not uncommon for necessity to poison our relationship with God. Now, the friend is not the necessary, he's the chosen, the free. Friendship is an experience sustained by forgiveness. Those who are only friends with their friends do not in themselves make the world a better place. Incongruity does not count when it comes to friendship. what we do know is that without friendship, the woman or the man would live as if in exile. Friendship empowers us to say, I am because you are. Thank you very much. Well, I have to say that there are lots of wonderful excerpts in your books. But actually here we have this involuntary mention of the concept of Daniele's concept. Daniele has just talked about the unknown friend. And precisely in this excerpt, you write that actually, if you are a friend only to your friend, you are not going to make the world better. And these two concepts are very, very similar. Well, there are lots of things that I liked a lot about this excerpt, but I would like to highlight forgiveness and gratuitousness. I believe that this is a rule of life and not only of friendship, meaning that this natural human activity, that is to say, friendship needs both factors. These factors actually smell like divine, smell of divine. When we think of friendship, we think, for example, of reciprocity. The friend is the person whom we can look into the eyes. He or she is someone who replies to us, who responds to us, who accompanies us with their presence, who nourishes us. However, the friend is not precious simply because he or she, in a way, is capable of giving us an answer. But also because they help us experience gratuitousness, which is an experience of mere grace. I mean, talking about Father Giussani said about friendship that we can consider someone a friend when the destiny of the other is loved above any other thing. So this kind of placing the other at the very center in this, in a very, in a way that is deprived of any interest. This is something that really makes our existence bigger. Any friend makes our life bigger because it basically gives us the possibility of experimenting dimensions of the human, of the spiritual. And here the experience of the gratuitousness resides precisely here. And all of this gives us the flavor of something that is truly divine, that we can actually grasp in our existence. So as it is like, so friendship is without a reason, is without a why. We cannot justify why we feel why we are friends to a person. We do not even identify the precise moment when we turned friends. Sometimes, actually, we become friends without knowing it. And when we notice that, it's because we are already friends with the person. So there is something graceful here in friendship. This is something that also becomes a gift, a donation of ourselves to the others. When I speak about forgiveness, I also mean forgiveness in its etymological sense. So you have this prefix, pre, in which means from the Italian perdono, which basically means kind of forced donation. Well, in perdono, so in forgiveness, you have a complete donation. And this is what we experience in a friendship. Our friends are also our teachers of lightness. They teach us something which is similar to a smile, to something extremely light. That is basically what we get from friendship. One of the things which are particularly important to think about is actually that we need to learn friendship. It is indeed true that we all have this capacity. However, this capacity has to be taken care of. We have to work for it. It is not mere entertainment. We all bring our experience with us. We all share what we know and what we don't know of friendship. And that is really very important. I think that if we do not develop the sense of friendship, even in the many crises that friendship can undergo, well, that is because friendship is not necessarily always linear or simple. Sometimes friendship is a very difficult experience. Hence, the fact that forgiveness is fundamental. And the same applies to maturation, the ability to listen to the others. I mean, this is something that has to grow in us. In a society that is increasingly dependent on technology, in a society in which the individual is not always looked after and taken care of, well, we run the risk of becoming illiterate when it comes to our emotions and our affections. We become illiterate of friendship. In the encyclical Fratelli Tutti, it was very curious to note what Pope Francis did. Actually, Pope Francis used the term brotherhood and social friendship as nearly synonymous terms. We say that a friend is a brother whom we choose. But actually, friendship has an individual as well as a political dimension, a social dimension. It is fundamental that our societies promote a reflection on friendship, and that friendship is not turned into a secondary topic in our lives. I mean, friendship has to become a priority. Our world is polarized. And in such a world, I believe that friendship is the hope we have. If we all bring with ourselves the possibility of establishing friendships, relationship, even with strangers who could be our friends, well, I think that this could be decisive. I mean, it could be decisive for the future to consider that friendship is an urgency for our societies, not only for all of us individually. Thank you, His Eminence.
Well, today we are actually reflecting on this. Well, Daniele, in your last book, in your latest book, you have chosen fiction and left autobiography. And, well, here you tell the story of a father with an autistic son. Let's hear an excerpt, first of all, of this book, and then we will talk about it later. From Air Hunger, Fame d'aria by Daniele Mencarelli. Gaia, it is her nature, tries to find the only flame amidst the dominance of darkness. You must have friends, I suppose, or some association that deals with this type of pathology that helps you out. Pietro is no longer used to the truth coming out of his mouth. If you want, I'll say yes, but no. No one. The friends we had, almost all of them got scared, or maybe we closed ourselves off. Who knows? There are associations. Many are good, but in the end they do their own thing. They certainly cannot take the place of a family member and all of the difficulties. Gaia approaches. He is almost intimidated. And you? How are you? No response, just a shrug. Come on, tell me. What do you want me to tell? He would like to keep quiet. Now, we live a kind of habit of normality, very tiring and not very happy, of course. But when we found out, when we realized that despite all the promises, the therapies, his improvements would be minimal, knowing that you will never see your son kick a ball or play with others. In those years, it was terrible. At night, Bianca and I would sit at the foot of the bed, wondering who we would leave him with, who would look after him when we were gone. Thank you. Well, there's a paradox here. Gaia offers a friendship to someone who is alone in isolation. And friendship takes you out of isolation, which can be lacking, like air, which is the title of your book. Exactly, that's some air hunger, lack of air. I was talking to a theater director that said that the middle-class world was the one that created the drama, whereas in the past there were only tragedy and comedy. And so when Pietro tries to hide his suffering but cannot hide it, puts the other person in front of a choice that is either to turn back and not accept that suffering, or surprise, first of all, himself, and somehow take charge of that suffering. Pietro is a man that tries to, like screen himself, and without asking, he is like saying to the other, you have to help me. I'm not telling it to you, but I'm not telling you this, but you need to be friends. And it is clear that we might say a lot about this because, the feeling, the emotion of compassion, of empathy has become something different. I see that there are people in schools that are like crying for their pain, but they don't want to feel compassion from others. Whereas Pietro finds in the dialogue with others a new house, a place where to be born once again. But the words of his eminence are also resonating here, and I'm really, dazed and surprised by his words at the same time, because what he said is crucial. The real measurement of friendship is a political factor to the same extent of poetry, of literature that is looking for a relation. So what is that makes, for example, what is illegal, legal, and vice versa, or, something meaningless, meaningful, like a question. Someone making possible something that in this world where there is a lot of technology and can make what is illegal legal, or possible what is impossible. The real friend is the person who always welcomed our question and maybe says, okay, I'll try as well. This is the political dimension of friendship and of poetry. It is political not only when it talks about civil commitment or political commitment, but also in other cases. Our concept of politics has changed, whereas politics is at the basis of living together in a place. It is what makes the human legal, any question about human legal and legitimate. And I ask this question because by asking this question to me, you made me think of it. And that's the political dimension of friendship. A friend makes a question legitimate. And I think that this is the real dimension of friendship. Friendship also as a social fact, as Cardinal Tolentino was saying earlier. But before asking the following question, let's hear to the last excerpt, which is dramatic, but it is a very important one by an important author, Primo Levi. From If This Is a Man by Primo Levi. Now, none of this happened between Lorenzo and me. As far as it makes sense to want to specify the causes for which precisely my life, among thousands of other equivalents, has been able to stand the test, well, I believe that it was really due to Lorenzo that I am alive today, and not so much for his material aid, as for his having constantly reminded me by his presence, by his natural and plain manner of being good, that there still existed a world, a just world outside our own. Something and someone still pure and whole, not corrupt, not savage, extraneous to hatred and terror, something difficult to define. A remote possibility of good, but for which it was worth saving. Well, these words were written remembering Auschwitz by Levi, who said there was one person that he named, that he knows the name and surname, so there was a friend who allowed him to save himself. A friend that, as the Cardinal was saying earlier, friends happen, and only later you realize what miracle it was. And that miracle was Lorenzo saving the life of Primo Levi. But those 5 words of Levi's remain really impressed in our mind. A remote possibility of good. One might say that even far from the lager, in much less painful situations, well, in situations that haven't equaled that terrible moment in the history of mankind, well, even far from the lager, those 5 words could go on and see in somebody else a remote possibility of good. Well, these words are wonderful, very profound, and make us reflect. To me, being here in Rimini is being close to the memory of a dear friend of mine, because the first times I was here, it was to go to Pennabilli in the mountains and visit Tonino Guerra, visit him, a very, very big poet. Tonino Guerra, in one of his poems, in a discussion that was similar to this one, wrote several times that when he was leaving the lager in Germany, he was reassured by one thing after imprisonment. And it was the fact that he saw a butterfly and he didn't feel like eating it. Because the fact of experiencing pain and suffering in ourselves becomes like a prison if we repeat it, if we are not able to see some horizon of liberation. And when this man left the camp, left the lager, was still able to feel wonder, surprise, gratuitousness, and understood that there was something human in this. In such extreme moments, such as the ones mentioned by Primo Levi in this incredible book of hymns, well, the experience he mentions is how can we survive? How is it possible to survive to pain? And it's not easy. It's not something that we should, take for granted. Levi endured something extreme. But we can have similar experiences. And how can we survive? We can survive if we open up to an experience that can be far away, but it is an experience of good. Elie Wiesel, Nobel Prize for Peace, an important writer who also survived the concentration camps. He said, we know the absolute evil, but we tend to forget the absolute good, which is the horizon of man. And he told that when he was in the lager, it was enough for him to hear a name instead of a number. And that was already an experience of good for him, being called by our name, by a friend, and a friend is a witness. A friend is someone that makes our testimony live on. So if we are called by our names, well, we get closer to this possibility of good. We all know the wonderful story that Primo Levi told about Lorenzo, who gave him some food or a T-shirt that was, full of holes. But he was the witness, the credible witness of good. He was a builder that by culture and by education and was somehow far away from Primo Levi, but he was the one who could bring this good. And Primo Levi told that this builder saved his life because he was able to create in his heart, in those dark hours and days of his personal story and the history with the capital H, well, he was able to create and build a bridge connecting the absolute evil to the possibility of good. And this is what always saves us. That is the mission that each one of us has in others' lives. From Primo Levi, surviving witness, to Etty Hillesum, who didn't make it but left us a wonderful diary. Let's hear. From the diary of Etty Hillesum. Thursday, the 9th of July, 1942. Such words as God and death and suffering and eternity are best forgotten. We have to become as simple and as wordless as the growing corn or the falling rain. We must just be. And me, I'm already far enough along to be able to honestly say, I hope to go to the labor camp to be able to support the 16-year-old girls who also go there. To reassure parents left behind, don't be anxious, I will watch over your children. When I say that running or hiding makes no sense, that there are no loopholes and that it is better to stay with others and try to be there for them and be what we are still able to be, it seems that I am very, very resigned. It seems that my attitude is completely different from how I understand it. I still haven't found the right tone to explain this intact and joyful feeling of mine in which all sorrows and all passions are included. I still speak in a philosophical and bookish tone as if I had invented a consolatory theory to make my life more pleasant. For the time being, I'd better shut up and be. Thank you. I don't know why, but this quote made me think of many things you wrote, but in particular, in these lines, there is the profound sense of what life is. And it's incredible to think that these are among the last pages of the diary by Etty Hillesum. Well, she wrote a lot before being taken to Auschwitz. And so this is almost the end, and she got to the meaning of life, because the meaning, the sense of life is to be there. Well, it is, and it is to be there also in conditions that no one would wish for him or herself or for their family. Testori talked about, some places like hospitals where there are strange experiences and where you can find the absolute evil, but you can also find the opposite, that is the absolute good. Etty Hillesum is really sort of, mountain high that we can look at from the bottom to understand the absolute good based on her experiences. But His Eminence said something that before that is in line with what Etty Hillesum said. Everyone should find witnesses of good. I'm quoting more or less your words. And thanks to you and Etty Hillesum and you, we can try and find credible witnesses of good, which is much easier than what we may think. I've been to the meeting since I went to places, even if I'm not religious. I went to places where charity, where voluntary work was normal. And I want to say that you are the credible witnesses of a good that is happening. And you should always remember this, because This room is here, this hall is here to witness a kind of good that is inside us, and we should never, ever forget this. I think, and with this I would like to conclude, that there is another big revolution ahead of us. That is being able to better tell about the good, because, you know, the evil, the conflict, as you taught me, is what is at the basis of human drama, but good is full of credible witnesses, and we should remind us, all of us, of this, and I want to remind this to you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniele. I think that we are now at the end, because we are actually finishing the time allotted, but we still have a few minutes. I was impressed by a statement made by His Eminence, Cardinal Tolentino, who said, "We need a bridge that saves us." This is political. This is really political, because, ladies and gentlemen, these two figures you've been listening to are poets and writers, and their words have a meaning they weigh, and it will be wonderful to go back and listen to their words once again, thanks to this service provided by the meeting. But to go back to this idea of the bridge saving us, which is something we do not fully believe in, but it's true and can change the world. You know, maybe when we were young, we had this clearer in mind, or maybe when you see it from closer, you see the remote possibility of good, you start feeling like telling others about this. And so I would like to finish by this encouragement. When Goethe arrived in Italy 2 years before the French Revolution, well, he got a cab at the end of the 1800s, and he took a carriage. He was on Garda Lake. It was a windy, beautiful day of September. You know, those beautiful days that just lie ahead of us, that are very clear, with clear skies and clear, you know, clear views, sorry. And he had this wonderful view at the Garda Lake, and he wrote in the diary that he had a problem because he was with the carriage driver. He wrote, "I would like my friends to be here with me." And friendship is this too. When you find good, when you find what's good, you really need to communicate it. What you said, Alessandro, and what Mencarelli said is something that I would like to go back now. And before coming to this meeting, I visited the exhibition La forma delle parole, the shape of words. And I was really struck by that moment, because there were lots of young people listening to the making of every word, every works of art. And I was really impressed by seeing just an image, a group of people in front of a word like the words compassion, the word family or friendship. We are hungry of words that can really shed a light not only on our hearts, but on our civilization, on our culture, on this moment of transition that we are currently experiencing. And one of the words that we all share is friendship. We depend a lot on this word. This word was like, you know, a long path, a long journey for the revelation of God in our history. If you think of James' letter defining Abraham as the friend of God, and the Exodus tell about the meeting of God with Moses like a man talking to a friend. And so friendship gives us the grammar and the words to also get into the mystery of God, the mystery of the man, and the mystery of God. And this is something that we should care for and hold dear. Daniele has often repeated the political dimension of friendship, and I think that Pope Francis really brought us on this path, presenting social friendship as a long journey, as a cultural human language that we need in order to bring hope to this world. Thank you.
Daniele.
Daniele, I think that when faced with beauty, but also the horror that we can see in the world, one man, one person alone risks to become like an illiterate in terms of existence. They need to have a point of reference to understand the exact dimension of what they have around, and in order to share it, in order to make it grow. A person alone is a person that is against nature, because we cannot do much alone, and when we are alone, we cannot, let's say, take up beauty. Be not one, but two or more in front of beauty would mean to be able to multiply it. Otherwise, all alone, we cannot, you know, have the burden, bring the burden of beauty. We should be more than one. Thank you. So, as Cardinal Tolentino was saying earlier, we are hungry of words. But let me add that we are hungry of real words, true words. And I think that this afternoon we've listened to many of them. So thanks to you, thanks to José Tolentino de Mendonça and Daniele Mencarelli. Let me also thank the actors, Matteo Bonanni and Laura Palmeri. Where are they? There they are, Matteo and Laura. Thank you very much. Thank you for the reading. There's a heart in the symbol of the meeting, and in the heart of the meeting, there is a dove, because there is peace in the heart of the meeting. Even if it is like a bad word, we want to repeat it loud and clear. There is peace, and you can contribute to keeping the heart of the meeting alive, the red heart with a dove. Go to the Dona Ora stations and be generous. Donate. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
la civiltà dell'amore. Fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Il senso religioso o l'esperienza religiosa è innanzitutto un fatto, un fenomeno obiettivo, un fatto reale. Non è un'idea, innanzitutto non è un modo di sentire. Non solo si tratta di un fatto, di un avvenimento, ma del fatto più imponente e più inestirpabile della storia dell'uomo. Più imponente, più vasto, che neanche il fenomeno dell'amore dell'uomo e della donna, che neanche il fenomeno del rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perché il senso religioso è un avvenimento che pone, che afferma o che ricerca l'orizzonte entro il quale acquisti senso anche il rapporto tra l'uomo e la donna, anche il rapporto tra genitori e figli. Perciò è più vasto, perfino di quelli